if you have any kind of drip tape, irrigation, any kind of pumps, even a backpack sprayer, you don't have to have a special type of pump. Whereas if you're doing like a compost tea where you're waking organisms up and you're putting out microbes, they have to have a diaphragm pump, which I had to order like specially. Sometimes you can find them in Lowe's with a diaphragm pump, but I think we had to order this one, or you have to buy diaphragm pumps specially. So again, you can just use a bucket and water, and the Soluplex comes in a liquid. It also comes in a dry form, which is like a powder that's used on the seed treatment. And then this is humates. It's like rocks. Wait, no, this is dry Soluplex. No, this is the seed inoculant powder soil algae boost. It has micronized minerals and microbes. And I did a little demonstration, a video about how to mix it on the seed. But you basically just take a little sugar water, molasses water, or that's for your rhizobium if you have like a legume, and then that's your rhizobium inoculant. But this is inoculant for all seed, and it'll help your even your non-leguminous plants fix nitrogen. So not just legumes can fix nitrogen from the air. You have the right microbes. So sorry, I thought that was a humate bag, but it's the seed inoculant, which you just mix. You either mix with a dry Soluplex and a little sugar water, or you spray the liquid Soluplex on it, or take a little capful and mix it around in your seed in a bucket and you seed it.
So how much for like 10 gallons?
So for the mineral chelate, what you would do, I've got the recipes inside and I can send those out, but pretty much if you have the liquid Soluplex, I think about 15 ounces for like one of these blue buckets, which this blue bucket is to the brim is like 20 gallons, I think. So if you use, at least 8 to 15, maybe 8 ounces of Soluplex with 10 gallons of water, I'm guessing, and then you could put your borax or your magnesium sulfate, your Epsom salts or humates in there. Some things, like I said, the salts, like Epsom salt will dissolve like almost immediately. You don't have to wait, but things like your rock phosphates, some of these are humates and rock phosphates. Let's see, these were already put through a brew. That's the compost. I got injured and just something happened. I couldn't finish cleaning these up, but this is your rock phosphate, and I have it in a bag. This is after it's been through a brew with Soluplex in there, but it's basically like a sandy type material. But again, it was in a brew for 24 hours and not much, you still got a lot more that you could dissolve out of it. But this is just mined straight out of the earth. It's a source of phosphorus. Your humates. Look like bigger rocks. This is like nature's compost, and it's got like 90 some different minerals in it. Now, if you were doing a mineral chelate, you wouldn't have to put it in a bag. I was doing a compost tea, so I had them in a bag, but you can just dissolve them in the water. And so a lot of times we will use a brewer to make the chelates with more rock type stuff. So if we have to do rock phosphate, we learn that it takes 3 or 4 hours of stirring for the stuff to dissolve, even with the Soluplex. It still doesn't totally dissolve. So what we learned was we'll just fill a tank with water, and we have this blower pump that we hook to the bottom and blows air up through it. And we just turn it on overnight with the rocks and the Soluplex and this and that. And we just, it's doing its own vortex. And then when we come out in the morning, it's ready to mix into our tank of our spray rig. I have it's literally a paint mixer that goes on a drill. If you want to just sit there and stir, like I said, you can leave it, stir it up, then leave it overnight and stir it up again, and you're going to find that if you put, this many pounds of rocks in there, you're still going to have this X amount of pounds that didn't dissolve. So you have to put a little more than you want, and every volume of water can only absorb so much, right? Like there's only a certain amount of salt you can put in water. So if you're having trouble dissolving, you can add a little more Soluplex, a little more water, and increase the volume which you're trying to dissolve it into, and that can help. And that's where the math gets really tedious because, and I just, you do your best. Something like boron or magnesium, those you can figure out because they dissolve. So everything you put in there goes into the water. But with these rock type stuff, it becomes harder and harder to actually know how much phosphorus you got out there but you're getting some, and you can see the plant response. So I would say obsess less about the math, do the process and see if it works. And if it works, and your plants then start falling off again, basically you can do it again, and you can keep working on the soil with that stuff. So that would be a good indicator that putting that into your soil, maybe spending a little more money and time putting that in the soil would be good for the long run. So again, the way to know what your plants need is usually a tissue test or a plant sap analysis, which A&L Labs does it. It's now called Waypoint, but if you search for A&L Eastern Laboratory in Richmond, you can grab parts of your plant like the leaf or and they on their website they have a whole training on what parts of the plant, and basically usually it's the top or the recently growing tips. So like this plant doesn't look super healthy, right? Like it's twisting, it's got some different discoloration. Now it's not super sick, but if I wanted to know, and it tells you how many leaves you have to make a sample on their website. But if you have any questions, you call me and we can walk through it together. But you basically just can go out there, grab it, put it in a paper bag, not a plastic bag, because you don't want it to mold. You send it to the lab. It's Richmond. It gets there in a day, or sometimes they even drive it there if I need to really know. And it's not expensive postage. The test is not expensive, and literally within 2 or 3 days, they turn it back to you. And so within 4 or 5 days, you can know what your plant needs. Now then, it might take you 4 or 5 days to make this, figure out time in your schedule, the rain, whatever, get it out there. And again, that plant is every 10 days. I mean, you've lost a lot of the yield determining window. So the quicker you know, the quicker you can get it out. And over time, I start to know my fields. So I start to know my fields are still low in sulfur and boron, like every year, but I haven't put it out there. So what I'm interested in doing is doing some trials of, putting out some of the soil mineralization program, which when I added up the cost of doing some of like what fully my soil would need, is getting in the hundreds of dollars an acre, and I've got a lot of acres, so I can't really afford to do that on 200 acres or whatever. So I'd like to do a trial with like, okay, here's the minerals on the soil, and here's just the soluplex, and here's soluplex and microbes, and here's soluplex and minerals. Like there's all these trials that I'd like to put up. Funding and time is really limiting, so I'm trying to learn as much as I can about how these things play together, because again, microbes plus minerals plus enzymes equals magic. The soluplex feeds the microbes, and it makes the minerals available, so it's the enzyme, and it has enzymes. So it kind of is the ingredient that makes all this stuff really activated fast. And even without anything, if you just put soluplex down in the soil and you see a response, that's a good indicator that there's something missing. But the soluplex makes everything available. So I will want to say a very important caveat or warning is, let's say you put out bone meal and feather meal and all this stuff, and you tilled it in, and now you're planting, now you're in the growing season, and you decide to put soluplex out. There is a chance that you over fertilized. So I would recommend, if you put a lot of stuff in the soil, to start with like half a gallon an acre or quarter gallon an acre of soluplex rather than the full gallon an acre, so that you don't over fertilize. And the thing with the soluplex is you will see within a few days, so sometimes within hours with the houseplants. Like I've left my aloes out when it's freezing, or I've let them dry out. They've been gray, and I just take a little handful of compost, a little soluplex, and then within hours, like I have photos documenting the color coming back into them, or like, sometimes you put the soluplex down. Like I've had bad experiences buying potting soil and then using soluplex because they have a lot of manure, or they put a lot of, you can make too much nitrogen available, right? Like really fast. So again, this is like playing God. I don't like to play God. I like to do things that are more the basic practices, like the cover crops, not disturbing the soil in the first place, and then, try to do this as a last result. But basically you would just, in your bucket, you can do it by hand with a lot of things that are salts, dissolve in water. The rock things, you're going to need some kind of mixer, because unless you want to sit there for hours and hours stirring, you're going to need something that stirs fast, and you may need more water. And so something like this, if you're going to have a larger scale production, is useful, because I can be making my mineral chelate, and then I can then have it ready for my next spray truck. So I just want to show you the
tumble that in a cement mixer too.
The rocks. Oh, the liquid. Yeah, I don't have one, but if you have something that churns or turns, or
yes.
and the soluplex go through any pump. The living compost teas, when we use these brewers for what they were really designed for, that does not play well with certain pumps or certain mesh sizes and certain filters. But I just want to show you at Tractor Supply or Northern Tool and Hardware or whatever, you can buy these agricultural pumps, and it can make your life a lot easier from a backpack sprayer. So we have a backpack sprayer. It is a diaphragm pump one, so we can put this stuff out. The next step up is these can go on a lawnmower or on anything. We have a little, we got a spray rig from Tractor Supply that's like $300. That's like the tank, the sprayer, and everything. It's a smaller pump. These are 3 gallon a minute, 3.8. We have up to 6 gallon a minute pumps. So you can get different size pumps for how much volume you want to put out. And then you can run it with nozzles, like mister nozzles. So if you want to put on your lawnmower while you're mowing in between your berries and be misting to the side, you could multi-purpose that. We also use it with a root injector. This is in our trees. You punch it in, and then I'll show you, the water comes out of all these little holes, so you can actually get the product into the root zone. And then this is really great, and it wasn't that expensive. It's at a forestry supply company. It's a tree wand or bush wand, and it's a lot easier than that. So you could park a truck. We use these IBC totes, like the one behind you. We reuse them as we find ones without chemicals. I've got the spray rig. I don't see where we took it off, but it's over under the trees. But we basically refit that tank. We can stick it on the back of a heavy-duty truck, run a garden hose out, so you could park your truck at the end of your row of vegetables and drag a garden hose through and use these wands. So I'm just going to show you right that way. But you can turn it on to a light mist, so you can kind of mist things. And if you want to shoot a tree, you can go really far. So you can get the top of your tree, or you can get to your friend or whatever. And so it's, you don't want to pellet the tree, so you can kind of dial it back a little, and really get those droplets on the leaves. So when I'm doing a chelate, a lot of times I just want it to land on the leaf. I don't want to really, you don't want to hurt the tree with too much pressure. So a lot of times I'll do something. Oh, you know what? This is really expensive. You shouldn't get wet. So let me keep that over to the side. I get a little enthusiastic sometimes, but it's multi-purpose too, because you can like power wash with it or clean your deck or whatever you want to do. I wouldn't put any chemicals. I wouldn't put any chemicals in it. Yeah, so the fungi, that's a whole other topic, but you can dig up your soil and shake it around in water, and you can see if it's fungally active, because it'll have like foam and these oils on the surface. So if you take a shovel of your soil and you get a like a little plastic clear bin, and you just start agitating it, like take a chunk, and if it gets this milky, foamy stuff, then you have active fungal glues in the soil. So that compost had some in there, and when I started spraying it, you can see it come out. But actually that foam may have been Simple Green, I'm not sure. But the other thing I want to show you is the root injector. So, and then afterwards, it's really important, just rinse. Simple Green is a great all-natural cleaner that doesn't harm the microbes. So we'll take Simple Green and water and put it in this and run it through the pumps or run it through our applicator, because the soluplex and minerals are caustic, and so then you run some fresh water through after you clean it. So we clean the insides of the pumps and the applicators to keep them, this thing I've had since 2008, and it's still working great. The injector is really interesting. These all go on hose attachments, and we get these little banjo couplings, and you can we have this garden hose that just has a coupling on it, so we can quick connect onto our.
They like this.
So for example, I was driving the truck the other day with one of my nozzles hooked, one of these pumps going on a spray nozzle to my right. So as I was driving, I was spraying, and then we planted our trees in clumps along the row, and so I'd stop and I'd get out, and I mist wand the new trees, and then I root injected them, and then I started driving in with the other nozzle, so I could just flip back and forth. So it allows you to do kind of multitask with these quick attachments, and then so then basically starts flooding, and so you can punch it down in the soil, and you can flood and do like a radial pattern. A lot of times in compacted soil, it's starting to come up out of the soil surface, so there's a compaction layer in there, and the soil is just saturated. So then I move to my next point, and you'll be able to see real fast how compacted your soil is. you know, and some soils can take it for a while and you never see it come up, and then other soils it just starts immediately coming up, and then you know why that tree is having a problem. So getting the minerals down into the root or microbes into the root is a good thing, and getting them on the leaf. This chelate is really more for the leaves, but you can also inject it into the roots. And we use the root injector a lot with compost tea because we want to get the microbes in the root zone. And we want to get things down to penetrate below that compaction layer, because the weeds are helping us do that. If you notice at the farm, we don't spray for weeds because they're breaking that compaction and they're remineralizing our soils and things. And so in our gardens and stuff, we do remove some of them, but we really appreciate what the weeds are doing for us. So so basically, from a bucket to a backpack sprayer, the step up from that would be these spray wands and nozzles, you know, pumps, and then really we've done thousands and thousands of acres with this. Since these pumps have run since 2008. They're about $200, $250 a pop. They last a long time. You can buy replacement diaphragms. I can teach you how to clean them, and we teach all this in our workshops, but you know, they're very durable, and they have little shock absorbers, like they can run dry. You don't have to worry about burning the pump up, like if you're cleaning it and then something you know, it's very easy. You can put them on, we put them on a switch, so from wherever we're driving, we can switch them on and off and switch left and right.
How much debris do they handle?
They handle a good bit, but we usually use these mesh bags when we're pouring into the tank to sieve out anything, because if you can get a piece of your cleaning brush, like a little plastic brush, or a piece of gravel, or any of that, especially if you're doing these mineral chelates, you've got to strain it. Yeah.
So you think a paint strainer would be enough? It's like a fabric. It's like a
very fine mesh,
That's
so it's not a. They can't handle a terrible amount of debris. The good news is it doesn't usually ruin them, but it is a pain to take all the screws out, clean the diaphragm with a toothbrush, and then get back together. You've lost a lot of time, so we find it more timely to whatever we're pouring into. We just clamp, we take an old one that's ripped or a little piece of fabric, and we just pour through it, and that kind of helps prevent clogging. That's a good tip. Any questions? I know we kind of this is not very comprehensive as far as literally step-by-step details, but it's kind of to give you the idea and the context of where this foliar feed fits in your general nutritional program, and that it is possible, and just the idea that plants have a different time of when they need nutrient, you know, and how you can make your decision about putting it on the soil, putting it on the plant. Zuko, he's telling you he doesn't want you to sniff him. He doesn't know body language very well. He needs someone to snap at him every once in a while. So, you know, this is just one tactic. It's definitely not something I do very often, and again, it just is in your context of whether you have something you want to, that's easy. Oh, I took inside is the thing that they make things at Lowe's or any home, you know, Walmart or any garden store that are like a plastic bottle, and they're for chemical applicators. It works fine with that.
Yeah, like a hose and sprayer. Yeah.
So, you know, and you can play with the rates. I mean, literally the only way to know is how much product you put in, and then how many gallons came out, and like what area you covered with that. It's, you know, you just have to play around with your applicator system, and but sometimes, like the nice thing is with the Soluplex, you've got if we were doing a field application, you could do up to 4 gallons an acre and not really harm things necessarily if you hadn't put a bunch of fertilizer down right before you did it. And but that's for economics on a large scale. You don't want to put 4 gallons if you don't need 4 gallons. So I would say start with 1, and then you could go down or up from there. Like do a little test patch. You know, it's really good to. You never know what's in your potting mix. You never know what's going to be made available. So do a little test plot, and then or a little test patch, and then you'll know within a day or two if it's helping or not. You know.
Do you want to not have the animals eat on it for?
It's fine.
So they could come right behind
I could
you.
eat it. Yeah, that's the nice thing about it. There's no time they have to be off of it. I spray right. You know, if I sometimes just spray right in the field with them. And I know people say, well, I'll eat Roundup. You know, it doesn't mean it's safe. But this was developed by a Cancer Research Institute, and they literally said you wouldn't want to drink a lot of it, right? But it's not going to hurt you. So, and the
Roundup a chelator?
Yeah.
Doesn't it grab minerals?
It does. does.
Wouldn't it grab all the minerals out of your gut?
It does. That's the problem. That's why.
But
That's-
don't kill you.
That's the big
Don't kill you.
problem. Yeah. I was talking about the soluplex. As far as I know that saying like you could drink it has been used by a lot of chemical companies as a legitimate, reason that it's okay, right? Like just because I said, oh, you could drink the stuff doesn't mean you should trust me. But
Somebody asked me, "Well, can you drink that? You say that's tea, compost tea. Can you drink it?" I said, probably wouldn't hurt you, but I wouldn't take the chance.
Make
Well,
you go to the bathroom.
Trad Cotter, he's like an amazing mushroom guy. He's like, people call me all the time, send me a picture, say, can I eat this? And he always says, the answer is always yes, you can eat it. It's just a question of what it's going to do to you, right? Like, so don't send me a picture and say, can I eat this? Because I'm just going to say yes. And, he's like,
I had a botany teacher who said you can eat anything once.
that's right.
But there's old mushroom hunters and bold mushroom hunters. But there's no old,
Bold
bold.
mushroom hunters. Yeah.
I like that.
So do you guys think anything you learned today would be useful to you at home, even if it's not the mineral chelate?
I think so. I am a little befuddled about a few things,
Well,
but then that comes with being 70.
I'm happy to stay as long as you want. We can talk through things, and it's sometimes hard to be presented with a very small